I'm Don Meyer, and I'm with the McLean County Extension Program here in Wilmington Normal, and we're here to talk at the moment about the importance of soil to McLean County. It's a great agricultural county, a lot of corn and soybeans being produced here. If you like to eat, if you're like me and you like to eat, you should very much care about what's happening with the soil on our Mother Earth. And in my left hand here, you'll see a miniature version of a globe, mostly blue in color with a little bit of green on there, which would represent the landmass. If I could have you imagine, using the red apple as my illustration, a little experiment here to show you how important soil is and why we should value what goes on in the soil here in McLean County and other places. I'm going to take this apple, which again, as I'm asking you to represent, is the earth, it's the globe, and I'm going to cut it into 4 pieces. Generally, when you look at a picture of the earth from the atmosphere, it almost always shows up as mostly blue in color. And that blue color represents the fact that most of the earth, the surface of the earth, is covered in water. The green on this globe would represent the part of the earth that's the landmass. So if I look at this apple being my model earth, 3/4 or 3 slices out of 4 I'm going to take away because that represents water. And the water certainly is an important resource, but today we're here to talk about the soil. Taking this 1/4 of the apple, I'm going to slice it down the middle as close as I can to break it into 2 pieces. So now I have 1/8 of the earth in each of my hands. I'm going to set aside 1/8 of the earth because that would represent the mountain areas, the desert areas, the swamp areas that we cannot grow food. And certainly they are exposed land masses, but they are not good enough for food production. So in my hand I have 1/8 of an apple. I'm going to cut that into 4 pieces as well, because even the land that isn't mountainous or isn't swampy or isn't desert, we are not able to grow food or grow crops on much of that land. There are areas of the earth that perhaps have either too many rocks in the soil, we can't use our machinery on that, or there's just simply too much challenge with that soil, or perhaps not enough soil fertility. We have areas of the earth that get either too much rainfall or not enough rainfall, and we cannot grow crops on those parts. We have parts of the earth that are perhaps too tall, as I said earlier, too swampy, simply just not productive soils, perhaps too cold, too much near the North or the South Pole. So I have 1/32 of the earth now in my hand. That represents the soil that produces all of the food for the entire U.S. population, as well as the world population. And I'm going to slice the peel off that 1/32 of an apple, because that represents the topsoil. It's in that topsoil where all of our plant roots live and get their nutrients and provide the food that we eat. Now this is a finite or a part of the earth that will not grow in size. We're not gaining any land mass each year. This is simply what we have to start with. And as we have built roads over the years, we take away a little bit of that slice of topsoil. We build houses that we enjoy living in. We build buildings to work in. We're slowly diminishing that supply of soil that's feeding our entire earth population. So every time we build a house or build a road, we're taking away a little bit of that. Fortunately, our farmers continue to get more and more productive with their farms each year, and we're able to grow enough food to satisfy the population of the entire earth with just this much of the earth's surface. So if I haven't convinced you today the importance of taking good care of the soil, I haven't done the job that was assigned to me, and I hope that as a take-home lesson, you will appreciate the quality of soil that we have and the fact that we should take good care of it. Thank you.
Little grass strip through the valley.
It's called a grass waterway for a reason. That's where, when lots of rain hits, there's going to be a good amount of water that has to move through a field in some cases. Water is always going to go to the lowest point. Well, like right on this farm that we're on here, I've seen 6-inch rains hit, enormous amount of rain that's not just coming from this field, it's coming from several fields because there's a fairly good-sized watershed here. It all comes down and all comes running through one area of this field. That's why it's grass. It's designed to catch that water so we don't have major soil erosion problems.
So farmers have taken a number of different steps to prevent erosion. One would be putting in a grass waterway. Another thing would be to eliminate tillage across the farm. Both of those things can work together to reduce the amount of erosion. Farm drainage is certainly one of the most misunderstood topics in our country, I know for sure. When you talk about farm drainage, there are a lot of misconceptions out there, both from farmers and from other people in the community, wondering, how does this really work? So we thought we'd start by explaining that.
Well, what it comes down to is we put drainage tile in the ground in a lot of cases. Now, certainly you can do surface drainage too, but the main thing we wanted to focus on here was drainage tile because that's the most misunderstood part of farm drainage. Anyway, when we put drainage tile in the ground, we're putting it usually at a depth of 3 to 6 feet deep in the ground. The purpose of that drainage tile is to take away excess water in the soil. As farmers, we want to conserve as much moisture as possible out in our fields. We definitely do not want to get rid of all the water. But by putting these tile lines out there, usually one every 50 feet or every 70 feet out in the field, and in some cases, it might just be a few lines over a whole field. It's not a real big deal, but we want to have a few of these lines out there to take care of excess water. The reason why we want to get rid of the excess water is this. Soil naturally is like a sponge. It can absorb water, and then as our crop needs it, it releases that water for the crop to use. It's a great thing. But the problem is if our soil gets 100% saturated, not only will our plants suffer because plants can't survive when there's no oxygen in the soil. The other problem is when we get a rain, if that ground is 100% saturated, the rain lands, where does it go? Well, if it can't soak into the ground, it has to run off. And when it runs off, that leads to soil erosion. We lose our soil. We lose any chemical or fertilizer that's on there. All that stuff, that's bad for the environment downstream. By adding tile and doing it in the right way, we can make our field back into a sponge. We can keep all that soil, the chemical, the fertilizer, everything in the field. That's a good deal for everyone.
Believe it or not, farmers are the biggest users of satellite technology. There are several uses farmers have for information from satellites, and it's making a big difference in how food is raised in the U.S. and globally as well. While there are many levels of accuracy for GPS guidance programs, more farmers are opting for high-end systems with repeatable accuracy within 1 inch. That allows farmers to precision place expensive plant nutrients for more responsible nutrient management. With such accurate satellite guidance, farmers can plant crops directly over where nutrients are placed, leading to higher yields. Soil conservation can also be improved with variable levels of nutrient use depending on soil types, as well as precision-placed subsurface irrigation and water table management too. As you can see, farmers have become the biggest users of satellite technology. With today's Ag Minute, I'm Darren Hefty. There are so many jobs that a farmer has to know. For example, when you take this cornfield here, a field is worth several $1,000s per acre depending on where you live. That's a lot of money to manage. You have to be a good financial manager. Then you get into the crop, you have to manage nutrients. You have to be a chemist. You also have to be a mechanic just to get the equipment to run right as you're moving through the field. Then you have to be an entomologist to figure out which insects are in your field, a botanist to figure out what types of weeds are out there. There are so many different things, so never underestimate how smart you have to be a farmer in today's economy. With today's Ag Minute, I'm Darren Hefty. Is this what you picture when you think of a corporate farm? Hi, I'm Darren Hefty with today's Ag Minute. When you think of a corporate farm, it sounds like some big business in a major city, and what it really comes down to in many cases is a family that's formed a corporation or an LLC in order to transfer the farm from one generation to the next. Here's a great example. There's a farm here where the father owns the farm, but he has 4 kids. Well, how do you split a piece of land into 4 Or how do you split a tractor or a tillage tool into 4? You don't do it. You have to divide it up into shares somehow. So what many farmers in this generation are doing is forming family partnerships or family LLCs to be able to transfer those assets from one generation to another. So next time you hear the term corporate farm, you may think of this instead of thinking of Enron or some other big company. With today's Ag Minute, I'm Darren Hefty. Why is everything on the farm getting so big? Hi, I'm Darren Hefty with today's Ag Minute. I get questions all the time from people in town that say, why are the grain bins bigger? Why is everything bigger on the farm every year? Well, there are a few different reasons why. First of all, the small bins, they take so much more time to clean out and it costs so much more to clean out that it just isn't worth filling them. Also, the crop yields have gotten much bigger over the years. We used to raise 50 and 80 bushel corn. Now we're raising 200 bushel corn per acre. Finally, for farmers, they're feeding more people than they ever have before. When my grandpa was farming, they were feeding maybe 10 or 20 people. Now we're feeding over 100 people with each farmer. So farmers have to feed lots of people and harvest lots of crops, and they have to do it in the same amount of time. That's why grain storage is getting bigger. Everything's getting bigger on the farm to feed more people. With today's Ag Minute, I'm Darren Hefty. Well, for farmers, everything that they're putting in the ground and putting on the ground requires very precise placement in order for them to maximize their investment and minimize any potential negative impacts on the environment. For farmers, when they're planting their seeds, they plant an exact number per acre. With crop nutrients, farmers want to place them exactly where their crop's going to need them so they can use the least amount possible. The only way farmers can accomplish all this is using GPS satellite technology and very efficient monitors on every aspect of their operation. With today's Ag Minute, I'm Darren Hefty.
During our Farm Basics time today, we wanted to talk a little bit about how much it costs to farm. I think it's ridiculous, Darren. We farm, and I just can't believe how many dollars per year we have to spend just to put that crop in the ground. We wanted to go through some of that stuff today.
Well, of course, farmers are making all kinds of money, Brian, because it's so easy to farm.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Actually, putting in an acre of corn really does take a lot of thought and planning.
Or soybeans or wheat or any of these crops.
Yep, but you have to make some choices because you can't do everything 100% the way you want to. Otherwise, you can't afford to farm. You've got to make some cuts here and there just to make things work out right.
If corn right now is at $3 a bushel, can we make any money when we've got all these expenses?
Okay, well, if you've got $3 per bushel corn, it's going to be a challenge because if you were getting 150 bushel yield, now fortunately in Northwest Iowa last year yields were higher than that, but let's say we have a tough year this year. Maybe it's a little bit drier. We're talking about dry land production here. If we only get 150 bushel yield, we have a cost of production of $3.80 a bushel. That's going to be pretty tough to deal with. Now let's say we get an average yield and we get 175 bushels. We have a cost of production of $3.25. We've got to get up towards 200 bushel yields just to get that cost down below $3 where a guy could actually make some money.
Okay, so in summary, it costs a lot of money in the year 2010 to farm, and actually 2010 is a pretty good year because it's cheaper than 2009 to put that crop in. The whole point that we're trying to make today, if you're a non-farmer, is we just want you to understand how many dollars it takes a farmer just to put that crop in the ground and the tremendous risk that that farmer has. Because like we said, just to break even in a lot of situations, the guy's got to have pretty good yield out there. So it's kind of tough farming even in this day and age.
Well, it's not